Hi guys, how are you? Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. It does feel like a stage for bands, doesn't it? Anyhow, I have the pleasure of giving you a presentation on ecosystems, and since this is the keynote, I thought I would start by telling you a little bit about who we are, just so that at least you get some perspective. We are a privately backed and a government-backed organization that helps companies grow as quickly as possible. And we've had the privilege of working with over 350 companies that have collectively raised about $7 billion in the last 50 months. So we have an idea or two about what companies go through from the moment there are toddlers, children, teenagers, adults, and they grow really quickly from a little startup of 2 people to 1,000 people as a tech unicorn. So my presentation is really about ecosystems. Obviously, that's the whole point of the day. And to just give you some stats and figures from a public research that we do every year at the end of the year, especially in the UK, given that we're in the UK and it's London Tech Week. So let me start. Innovation globally is evolving, and it's evolving very quickly. And what do I mean by that? If you look at this slide, and I hope you can read some of that. Yes, I hope you can. In the past, innovation used to be about experimentation, R&D labs. That's how people thought of innovation. And that still goes on. It's not saying that it's going to be dying in any time soon. But actually, what's evolving is that the startup and the entrepreneur and the entrepreneurial talent or team at university, college of further education, school becomes the center of attention for innovation. And so what's happening actually is that constituents are now working around those types of people. That's why we talk a lot about founders and entrepreneurs. Whereas before, it would be like a PhD person in a lab coming up with something, with a robot, or whatever. That's really changing in technology, especially in digital technology. So it's not linear either. It can happen completely randomly, and that's the whole point of innovation. It's very creative. So when you dig a little deeper into tech ecosystems, there are really 4 key drivers of ecosystems. There are many other factors like profile, promotion, branding, but actually there are really 4 key factors that you need to get right. If you don't get these 4 right, you don't really have an ecosystem. The first one is talent. If you don't have the people, you don't really have an ecosystem. And what I mean by people, I'm talking about talented people with the right attitude. When I talk about the right attitude, I'm talking about the people who really want to solve problems. Look at things and go, why is it that way? Hell, I want to change that. Why is this like this? Hell, I want to change this. Those are the people you need to attract. You don't want to attract people who moan. You don't want to attract people who complain. And you certainly don't want to attract people who gossip. You want people who want to fix things. That's the first thing. The second thing is you want investors. And investors invest in people who want to solve problems. Because if they don't solve problems, they don't create value in the ecosystem. Thirdly, business environment and regulation. If you don't have that in place, then tech entrepreneurs don't tend to come to the place that is making them feel welcome. That means that governments, banks have to really understand how tech entrepreneurs operate. They need to have the space, the creativity to do what they need to do. And then finally, you have infrastructure. Infrastructure is the one with the columns. And no, sorry, I beg your pardon. It's the other way around. The infrastructure is the one with the global, the buildings. The regulatory environment is the one with the columns, clearly to do with democracy in Greece. But the one on infrastructure, I'm talking about office space, obviously digital infrastructure like broadband. These are really essential things. These are really, obviously digital broadband, fiber to the premises. These are very, very important points, especially for a fintech company or a gaming company that needs to get to your users really quickly. Even the amount of milliseconds makes a difference. So startup needs actually change over time. We probably all know that, but I don't want to take that as an assumption. And what I mean by that is you may have an idea. You may talk to your friend about it. You may meet them at university and start thinking about, well, does this really have any legs? Let's go and talk to some other people. And you start at a very early stage it's what's called ideating, sometimes called ideation. Then you start to really have the concept. As you talk to people, people will challenge you. And if you're going to think about the idea, you have to keep on challenging yourself. That's how it gets better. And then you commit, and then you validate, because people, if you have customers, that is a form of validation. If people are prepared to pay for your product, that is an essential point in your growth stage where you think, okay, now I have a business. And then investors suddenly become interested. So the point of this presentation, the point of this slide is just to say that needs change over time. So, with that in mind, I hope I've given you some context as to what I mean by ecosystems and at the global innovation, tech ecosystems, and bearing in mind now that startup needs change over time. So every year, we comprehensively conduct a survey in the UK that I would say is probably the most comprehensive across Europe. We have 3,400 completed surveys across the UK. A lot of them are about 50% of tech CEOs, and they tell us what they see. We also combine that with a whole stack of information from other players that really have a real nous about tech. Some of these you probably are familiar with, but I'll be using some of these stats from them in the presentation. So let's start with tech ecosystems and globally. This is the latest research that has been conducted by a Silicon Valley-based company called Startup Genome, and that they have looked at a number of things across the whole world in terms of cities. And the 4 key factors, interestingly, which is no surprise, which is performance, so how do they perform, how does a startup perform? Secondly, what kind of access in terms of funding do they have? Loans, venture capital, whatever that might be, debt. Market, how big is the market? Like in the UK, and I'm sure Ben from Level 39 will tell you this a little bit later, in the UK, in London specifically, for example, we have 250 banks here. So that's a lot of customers if you're a fintech business. That's what I mean by market. Fourthly, talent. And finally, startup ecosystem experience. And that's very important. If the experience for the tech entrepreneur is not frictionless or as frictionless as possible, guess what? They'll go elsewhere. Just like you have a bad experience with Ryanair or EasyJet, you go elsewhere. Same thing, same principle apply. So you'll see that London actually is doing pretty well. It's moved up the ranks over the last 3 years. And it's now in number 3 position. Clearly there are challenges ahead, but clearly there are solutions ahead as well, if we have the right attitude. So, do take a look at Startup Genome, but there's more that you can find on technation.io. In fact, actually, when you look a little bit deeper, what they've done here is that they actually found that London is the second most connected ecosystem in the world after the Valley. And this is by the number of connections that entrepreneurs globally have with London-based entrepreneurs. That says a lot about the diversity that you get in London. Over 300 languages are spoken here alone. Yes, while London is the financial capital, or I should say the epicenter, lots of businesses are actually being now created across the country, and we have a role to play in that and ensuring that people are aware that there's emerging specialisms that are growing across the country. So you get a national network of digital excellence. So you get cities that are really good at ad tech or fintech and fashion tech, creative tech, because of what's in that city. If you remember what I made the point about the 4 drivers of tech ecosystems, if you have a university that's really good at 3D printing courses, guess what? You might have a plethora of 3D printing companies around that university. Last month I was at a gaming company in Sunderland, and they're a gaming company of 30 people. Their main market is China and the US. They don't really think about the European market, nothing. The reason why they're there is because Newcastle University has a great course in 3D gaming technology and audiovisual design. So these are very important factors that actually contribute to ecosystems and why ecosystems can actually flourish. Anyway, the point is that, as you can see, London's doing very well on the venture capital side, 15 billion over the last 5 years. And as I said, yeah, specialisms are emerging across the country, and that's probably an important thing, because otherwise, if everyone's doing the same thing, guess what? You will get a zero-sum game. What you want to do is make sure that you have a federation of hubs that are working together in sync that makes the country stronger. So in terms of growth, and what impact is this having? If you have strong ecosystems, that actually has a very positive force on the economy. And to put it in numbers, the UK actually is number one when you look at the total contribution that the digital economy makes to overall GDP, according to an OECD report and McKinsey from last year. It's about 10 to 12%. The US is second and Sweden is third. Just to give you some perspective, the European Union is about 5.5% on average. Italy is about 4%. So the rate of adaptation by a country to technology is very important, and that's driven by the kind of companies that are based there, the kind of ecosystem that is based there, and it goes hand in hand. So you can see there's been staggering growth, and actually we're seeing that the growth of the digital economy is actually growing at 2.6x times faster than the wider economy. Now you could argue that the old economy is slowing down. I get that. But at least you're seeing that there is a lot of growth in this, and guess what? Governments will do everything they can to make sure that the jobs of tomorrow are secured here in their own country. And every 50 minutes, a digital tech company is created. When you get the conditions right, so if you go back to those 4 key factors, when you get those 4 conditions right, you start to get a lot of startup creation. Not every startup will make it. 8 out of 10 fail, but that's okay. Failure is part of the journey. And I know that's easier said than done, but you have to go through pain in order to gain and create value. So when you look at the Europe as a whole, again, the conditions are right. They've been right for a while now, for about 7 years. There's been a lot of creation of network of knowledge that's built up over time. And as you can see here, the UK accounts for 13 of Europe's tech unicorns. I mean, tech unicorns are $1 billion valued companies. And you can see that Aiden, who's heard of Aiden? Great. So they just listed, 2 days ago. I wish I bought some shares. Their shares doubled in one day. But they're based in Amsterdam. Amsterdam does a great job in building ecosystems. And you can see that that's quite a really impressive list of companies that have been built in over the last 5 to 6 years in Europe. The UK just happens to have 13 of them, or 38% of them. And look at Israel, small country, but produces a lot of unicorns. Again, conditions. It's not about the number of people you have in a country. It's about what you do in that country to attract the people. And Israel, is very good at that. So, and clearly a big factor that is happening in tech right now is the drive in AI. And that's no surprise if you look at all the tech unicorns in Europe, or in the UK, I should say. This is a UK slide. A lot of them are actually driven by algorithmic design. And we run a visa scheme on behalf of the Home Office, and we see a lot of algorithm engineers being attracted to the UK because of their special knowledge and expertise. And it's no surprise. When it comes to jobs, there are jobs, as I said, the algorithm engineer, that is a tech job, that's a digital tech job in the digital economy or the digital industries. But if you take an accountant working for a tech company, that is what we call jobs in digital tech. And when you put the two together, we actually have, in the UK alone, it's 2.1 million people actually work in technology. Just to put it into perspective, the UK is 4.5% unemployed, which is pretty much full employment. And you have 30 million people work in the UK. So you can get an idea that 2 million over 30 is still small, but it's significantly growing fast. As you can see, 230,000 jobs in 1 year is pretty high. It's pretty high. So what we also did was actually look at Meetup data. Has anyone ever signed up to Meetup? Yeah, that's great. I mean, I do encourage you to join up because there's always so much tough stuff to learn. And meetups are a great way of learning from other people, peer learning. And we looked at the top 400 UK meetups. And what you can see here is a multicolored diagram, which does represent something. And you'll see that actually software development and blockchain are very close together. What that means is that topics on blockchain are also shared with topics in software development. Meanwhile, you also get a lot of open source and AI. Don't ask me why. I did engineer. I was an engineer, but I've been trying to push the team to really understand why this is happening. And there's a lot of theories. But the point being that actually AI and blockchain are really taking center stage. So the amount of meetups that have been happening on those topics has been increasing steadily. In fact, London was, I think the first meetup in blockchain in Europe was in London in 2013. And that has obviously continued growing. So that's really interesting, it's really fascinating, and obviously this is very important from our point of view, because we're sort of trying to look at building ecosystems. We're trying to make sure that we accelerate the development of ecosystems around blockchains or topics or areas of the sector that are growing. So that's the way we stay in touch with what's going on at scale. We also, as I said, as part of this survey, we ask tech entrepreneurs, what are the top 3 things or top 3 challenges that you're finding, and what do they value as well. And interestingly, what came out is that an appealing area, there's a sense of space, a sense of place, and a sense of community spirit. The more community spirit there is, actually, the more willingness there is to share. The more willingness there is to share, the more open you are to innovation. There's a real equation of sorts there. It's no surprise, right? I've certainly worked in cities around the world, and the more open they are, the more innovative they are. It's no surprise. But I'm just saying that there's a real correlation there, and we've tried to kind of really bring this out in figures, especially to our government, and it's taken a lot on this. A very helpful community. A good example of what I mean by that is that I think it was 6 months ago, I met someone who was 19, went to university. He actually dropped out after the first 3 months. And he actually decided not to pursue another course, because sometimes you can change courses. And actually he decided to start a business. He pivoted 4 times in 6 months. And now he's preparing to scale his business to 100 people. It's an AI company. He's 19 years old. The reason why he was able to do that is because he had a community around him, and the university did not stigmatize the fact that he dropped out. They actually really cared about him. They made the decision to think, okay, this person's a genius. The university is not for him, but you know what? We're going to create the conditions to make sure that he can start a company if that's what he wants to do, because that constitutes learning. So learning in the 21st century, in the way we've known it in universities, that's going to evolve quite fast. I've been told to catch to time's up, but just to say, take a look at the website on technation.io. There's lots of stats. We have over 1,000 stats about ecosystem design and development, from, as you can see, from dev stuff to investment to talent and salaries, even, as you can see. So people who work in digital tech jobs or have a digital tech job actually make more money than people who are not in digital tech. Clearly, but the difference is quite staggering. But there are also issues to deal with, like diversity. Unfortunately, as you can see from this slide, only 19% of the workforce is female, and they're outnumbered by 4 to 1. We all know that diverse teams are always stronger teams and more sustainable. So these are the things that we kind of challenge ourselves with. We're very open to this stuff, because that's how you continue learning and adapting. You can't deny any of this stuff. And all this data, by the way, is all open on data.world. So you can go down, download all this data, play around with it, hack it, whatever. Even do a hackathon around it, which we're doing actually. We're encouraging lots of people around the country to do hackathons around it. Because we want to know more, we want to learn more. I guess I have to go, right? I have to finish, right? Okay, well, there you go. Before I actually do finish, maybe it's worth me saying that actually these are some of the areas that are growing. So what you have here is on the x-axis is the growth rate. On the y-axis is the early stage growth, and as you can see, blockchain, AI, big data analytics, fintech, they're growth areas. I guess it's probably no surprise to you as an audience. You seem very, very up on this stuff. So, as I said, please take a look at technation.io, stroke report. And yeah, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you very much.